Oh my goodness, it's a great question because you would probably get just a handful of people that would be.
Vince Gill appears to be the perfect country gentleman. He carries himself with the same humble charm that made fans fall in love with him decades ago. Behind his smooth voice and shelves full of Grammy awards, however, lies a different side of the man. There's a quiet critic, a fierce competitor, and someone who has kept his true feelings hidden beneath years of country politeness. Throughout his long career, Gill has quietly resented certain artists. He disliked those who chased fame instead of focusing on their craft. He couldn't stand musicians who broke traditional rules or who showed disrespect to the country music genre he spent his life defending. In recent interviews, Vince Gill has finally revealed the names of 7 artists who bothered him the most. You might think you know Vince Gill, but after learning about his true feelings, you'll never hear his music or these other artists the same way again. To understand his resentments, we need to start at the beginning. Before the fame and before the feuds developed, Vince Gill grew up in Norman, Oklahoma. It wasn't Nashville, but it was close enough for a young boy to dream big dreams. He was born into a household filled with music and strict life lessons. His father worked as a federal judge and played music part-time. The man was strict but loving, and he taught Vince both discipline and how to play guitar. These lessons shaped not just Gill's music but his entire approach to life. Vince's path to success was filled with heartbreak and struggle. In his early years, he joined bluegrass bands and worked hard through small gigs. He slept in vans and accepted whatever little pay he could get. He learned to survive on talent, determination, and support from fellow musicians who recognized his special gift. Everything changed when he joined the country rock band Pure Prairie League. His voice finally got the attention on it deserved. During the 1980s and 1990s, he became a major part of the country music scene. He won 21 Grammy Awards, countless Country Music Association awards, and earned respect from every corner of the music industry. People knew him as a songwriter, a musician who never took shortcuts and never followed trends just to be popular. His guitar playing was elegant, and his lyrics were honest and meaningful, but with success came disappointment. Behind the scenes, Vince watched as the country music genre he loved began to change. The changes were happening faster than ever before, and the music was becoming flashier and more commercial. Country music was transforming, and not always in ways he respected or appreciated. He saw artists become successful based on their image instead of their musical skill. He watched as genuine songwriting was replaced by mass-market formulas designed to sell records rather than tell stories. Awards began going to performers he felt hadn't paid their dues or worked hard enough to deserve recognition. These artists built careers on gimmicks, catchphrases, and shock value rather than musical substance. He sat in award shows, applauding politely even though his blood was boiling inside. He saw performers lip-syncing their songs while real musicians who actually played instruments were pushed into the shadows. He watched industry executives reward artists who played politics instead of focusing on playing their instruments well. Worst of all, he watched as the heart of country music, truth, struggle, and humility, got replaced by filters, flash, and fake rebellion that was manufactured for marketing purposes. For years, he bit his tongue and kept quiet about his feelings. But now, the gloves are off. Vince had never named specific names until recently, but he's finally ready to speak his mind about the artists who disappoint him most. The first name that shocked longtime fans was Kris Kristofferson. For decades, Vince Gill had publicly praised the legends and greats who paved the way for country music. But behind the scenes, there was one name that Vince completely avoided mentioning, Kris Kristofferson. They came from completely different worlds and had very different approaches to music. Kris was known as the outlaw poet, raw, rough, and unpredictable. He would crash parties, slur his way through interviews, and still somehow walk out with everyone's respect. Vince, on the other hand, was precise and polished. He was a technician in the recording studio and a perfectionist on stage. He valued technical skill, proper lyrical structure, and vocal control above all else. While Vince never openly attacked Kristofferson in public, there was something telling in the way he avoided mentioning his name in interviews. There were long pauses when asked about certain artists, and things were left unsaid but clearly felt by those paying attention. One story from a Country Music Association rehearsal made the rounds in Nashville for years. When Kristofferson was scheduled to perform, Vince reportedly left early, mumbling something about not wanting to watch another train wreck on stage. The story was never officially confirmed, but in Nashville, stories like that don't need confirmation to stick around and influence people's opinions. Privately, Vince was said to be deeply frustrated by the way music critics romanticized Kristofferson's messy performances. They called his sloppy style authentic, gritty, and real, while other more skilled performers who practiced relentlessly got passed over for recognition. One close friend claimed that Vince once said, "It's not deep, it's just sloppy." We lowered the bar and called it genius. Vince didn't hate Kristofferson's success, he resented how that success rewrote the rules of what greatness looked like in country music. To Vince, artistry was about mastering your craft through hard work and dedication. Chris, in his eyes, had skipped the discipline part and been rewarded for the damage and chaos he created instead. Years went by, and the tension between their different philosophies never fully faded. There were no duets, no tribute performances, and no collaborations between them. Even when Vince hosted events honoring other greats from Kristofferson's era, Chris's name was conspicuously absent, like a ghost left off the guest list on purpose. Now, in a rare moment of complete honesty, Gill finally included Kristofferson on his list. He didn't do it out of malice or personal hatred, but because the divide between their approaches was too deep to deny any longer. If Vince saw Kristofferson as a symbol of chaos and lack of discipline, the next artist represented something even worse in his eyes: the moment country music sold its soul for commercial success. That artist was Garth Brooks. It might seem almost like sacrilege to suggest tension between Vince Gill and Garth Brooks. They are both titans of the country music industry, two names permanently etched into the DNA of the genre. But if you know the history and followed the subtle signals over the years, the divide becomes impossible to ignore. Vince was the craftsman, the quiet poet, the guy who would spend hours perfecting a guitar solo or rewriting a verse until it felt like pure truth. Garth brought pyrotechnics, headset microphones, and a stadium-sized ego to the genre. He turned country concerts into rock spectacles, and to some people, including Vince, it felt like something sacred was being trampled on and destroyed. It wasn't just about the performances themselves, it was about the underlying philosophy behind the music. Gill valued nuance, restraint, and melody. Garth valued movement, flash, and massive scale. Where Vince delivered heartbreak with a whisper that drew listeners in, Garth roared about it across sold-out arenas that held tens of thousands of people. Gill saw himself as a steward of country music's roots and traditions. Garth, to him, was the architect of country music's commercial revolution, whether that change was for better or worse. In interviews, Gill once lamented that, "We lost the stories in country music." He never pointed fingers directly at anyone, but fans and industry insiders connected the dots. He didn't have to say Garth's name, everyone knew who had rewritten the rules and rerouted the river of country music. When Garth began selling out massive arenas and dominating award shows, many traditional country fans felt the soul of the genre was fading away. Vince, with his mournful ballads and intricate guitar solos, was being quietly pushed aside in favor of the bigger, louder spectacle that Garth represented. Insiders say that Vince was always gracious in public, but privately he mourned what the genre had become. He reportedly turned down opportunities to present Garth with Lifetime Achievement Awards. This wasn't out of bitterness or jealousy, but because he couldn't fake admiration he didn't actually feel. The conflict wasn't just a stylistic clash, it was a philosophical one that went to the heart of what country music should be. To Vince, country music wasn't about fireworks or crowd surfing or massive production values. It was about storytelling, roots, humility, and connecting with people on a personal level. Garth, for all his incredible success and popularity, represented an era where those traditional values got lost in the roar of the crow. WD and the pursuit of bigger and bigger spectacles. Was Vince's attitude jealousy, or was it heartbreak from watching a beloved genre transform beyond recognition? It was probably both emotions mixed together. Either way, Gill never celebrated Garth's wins with enthusiasm. He didn't clap during the standing ovations. He never showed up to occupy those front row seats when Garth was being honored. The next artist on Vince's list was a mullet-wearing heartthrob who made country music explode in popularity for all the wrong reasons, Billy Ray Cyrus. Achy Breaky Heart made Billy Ray Cyrus a household name practically overnight. The song was catchy, it was viral before the concept of viral even existed, and it sent country music straight into pop culture history. But not everyone was clapping and celebrating this success. Vince Gill, whose musical background was rooted in jazz-level complexity, deep songwriting, and traditional country values, reportedly found the track insulting to real musicianship. In a Country Music Association green room, Gill was overheard joking that Billy Ray's song set country music back 10 years. It wasn't just a one-off remark made in the heat of the moment. That quote circulated like wildfire among industry insiders, fueling speculation that Gill saw Billy Ray as a serious threat to the genre's integrity and reputation. To Vince, country music was supposed to be about stories, pain, hope, and truth drawn from real-life experiences. But here came Billy Ray with a one-liner hook, a dance craze, and a marketing engine so big and powerful it drowned out everything else that was happening in country music at the time. Gill once reportedly said that the song wasn't country, it was karaoke with a mullet. The comment was harsh but reflected his deep frustration with what he saw as a cheapening of the genre he loved. The two artists never collaborated, never shared a stage, and if they passed each other in hallways at industry events, witnesses said the encounters were icy at best. While some artists tried to balance innovation with respect for country music's roots and traditions, Billy Ray seemed to sprint in the completely opposite direction. He leaned into the flash, the hair, the hip movements, and the gimmick. To Vince, it all felt like a parody of what country music was supposed to be, heartfelt, grounded, and born from lived experience rather than manufactured for mass appeal. Gill didn't hate Billy Ray personally, he never needed to develop personal animosity. But he couldn't stand what Billy Ray represented, the rise of gimmicky imagery over musical substance, and music that began pulling Nashville in a direction Gill had spent his entire life resisting. The next artist on his list sold more albums than nearly anyone in country music history, but Gill couldn't bear the sound of her records. That artist was Shania Twain. To the world, Shania Twain was the undisputed queen of country pop. Her rise was meteoric, groundbreaking, glamorous, and seemingly unstoppable. But to many purists in the genre, including Vince Gill, she was something else entirely, a disruptor who was changing country music in ways they didn't appreciate. Her glossy production, pop-drenched hooks, and massive crossover appeal left little room for the kind of raw, roots-driven music Gill championed throughout his career. In her wake, a wave of other artists followed, all chasing the same sleek formula. They were leaving tradition behind in favor of market-tested melodies and million-dollar music videos that looked more like pop productions than country performances. Though he never named her directly in his criticism, Gill once said, "We lost a generation of real country fans chasing radio hits." He later added, "Sometimes we forget what genre we're in." For longtime fans of traditional country music, it wasn't hard to read between the lines and understand who he was talking about. While most legends in the country music industry eventually crossed paths through shared tributes, duets, or at least shared stages at major events, Gill and Twain never did. Not during her meteoric rise, not at award shows, and not even during genre-spanning tribute concerts where their names easily belonged side by side. For two such massive artists working in the same musical lane, that silence wasn't just awkward, it was deafening and clearly intentional. Behind closed doors, some industry insiders said that Vince saw Shania's rise as a tipping point, the moment when Nashville started chasing trends instead of talent, and when country music started sounding like anything but country music. Her success represented everything he feared about the commercialization of the genre he had dedicated his life to preserving. The next name on his list redefined bro country and left Vince shaking his head in disapproval. Jason Aldean. Jason Aldean burst onto the country music scene with baseball caps, heavy guitars, and lyrics that leaned more into trucks, whiskey, and tailgate parties than heartbreak and truth. His sound was loud, his brand was bold, and his fan base exploded almost overnight with young fans who connected with his party-focused message. But while mainstream audiences embraced him enthusiastically, not everyone in Nashville was impressed with this new direction. Vince Gill, meanwhile, had always championed songwriting as an art form and storytelling as the soul of country music. He didn't hide his disapproval of the bro country wave that Jason Aldean helped create and popularize. "I think we've dumbed it down," he once told Rolling Stone magazine. "There's room for fun in music, but let's not pretend it's country just because there's a pickup truck in the video." That wasn't just a passing opinion or casual observation, it was a direct shot ACR. OSS the bow at artists like Aldean. To Gill, Aldean's rise marked another major departure from the values he had fought his entire career to preserve. Loud production, shallow lyrics, and what Gill called lifestyle marketing over lived experience, were never what he believed country music should stand for. Country music should come from real experiences, real struggles, and real emotions, not from marketing departments trying to sell a lifestyle. Though both Aldean and Gill have appeared at major country music festivals over the years, they've never shared a bill or performed together. Industry insiders say that Gill has quietly declined to present awards or attend any event where Aldean was the featured headliner. It wasn't about ego or personal jealousy, it was about identity and what country music should represent. The distance between them wasn't just stylistic, it was deeply philosophical. One built his legacy on substance, craftsmanship, and musical integrity. The other built his success on spectacle, volume, and appealing to the party crowd. They represented two completely different visions of what country music could and should be, but if Aldean was too loud and party-focused for Gill's taste, the next person on his list might have been too loud and egotistical for the whole world. That person was Kanye West. This inclusion might sound far-fetched at first, but the reasoning becomes clearer when you examine Vince Gill's statements over the years. While Vince Gill never directly named Kanye West in his criticisms, he made one thing abundantly clear in multiple interviews: he believes that ego in modern music is suffocating the artistry and authenticity that music should represent. He has consistently called out artists who chase fame over craft, and spectacle over substance. If that criticism sounds familiar, it's because these are exactly the qualities that many people associate with Kanye West's approach to music and celebrity. In 2016, Gill said in an interview, "I see young artists walk into a room and expect the world to bow. Back in my day, you earned respect by listening first." When pressed by the interviewer if he meant anyone in particular, Gill just smiled and said nothing, letting his silence speak volumes, but the timing of that quote was no coincidence. It came in the very same month that Kanye declared himself the greatest artist of all time, during a now infamous rant that received widespread media coverage. The media ran wild with speculation about Gill's comments. Fans read between the lines, and people in the industry said they knew exactly who Vince meant, even if he wouldn't say the name directly. To Gill, music is sacred. It's about humility, service to the audience, and sincerity in artistic expression. It's not about hijacking award shows, demanding attention at every turn, or declaring yourself the greatest of all time. Kanye West, whether intentionally or not, became the embodiment of everything Vince seemed to stand against: chaos over control, self-worship over soul, and ego over artistry. They've never crossed paths professionally, and they've never needed to, because to Vince, this wasn't really about musical genre, it was about values. It was about how an artist should conduct themselves and what music should represent. Kanye represented an approach to artistry that was the complete opposite of everything Vince Gill believed in. Now you know the 7 names that Vince Gill couldn't stand, either publicly or privately. From legends like Chris Christopherson to pop crossover stars like Shania Twain, to genre-bending risk-takers like Kanye West, these weren't just casual disagreements about musical style. These were deep fractures in Gill's understanding of what country music should be, moments where Vince chose silence over support, and dignity over popularity. These conflicts reveal a man who spent his career watching a genre he loved transform in ways that often broke his heart. Whether his criticisms were fair or unfair, they show us an artist who cared deeply about maintaining standards, preserving traditions, and ensuring that commercial success didn't come at the expense of musical integrity. Vince Gill's story is ultimately about the tension between artistic purity and commercial success, and about what happens when the music industry changes faster than some artists can accept.